When you're staring at a dozen subwoofer options and trying to picture how each one will actually sound in your truck or sedan, the decision can feel a lot like gambling. You worry about overpaying for a model that ends up sounding thin or underpaying and getting a unit that can't keep up with the rest of your system. That's why I'm going to walk through the Sundown Audio X12 V.3 D2 the way I would if I were installing it in my own daily driver, and help you decide if the headline 5,000-watt peak claim translates into real-world value for you. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First, let's talk about the kind of vehicle where this sub makes sense. The X12 is a 12-inch, dual voice coil, 2-ohm design that shines when paired with a properly sized ported box, something on the order of 1.5 to 2.5 cubic feet, depending on your tuning goals. If you already have a custom enclosure or are willing to have a shop build one, you'll be able to let the high Excursion motor actually move a lot of air. That's where the Megaroll surround comes into play. It lets the cone travel farther without hitting its limits, giving you that deep, floor-shaking thump you hear in a good low-end track. For a typical daily commuter sedan, the practical benefit is a bass response that you can feel without it drowning out the rest of the mix. I've seen owners who run the X12 with a modest 800-watt RMS amp and still get a satisfying punch on songs like Uptown Funk or Feel Good Incorporated. The sub stays tight at low frequencies, and the extra Excursion means it doesn't sound boxy the way some smaller 10-inch units can when you push them hard. In a larger vehicle, a full-size SUV or a lifted truck, the same setup fills the cabin and can even be felt through the seats, making the listening experience feel more immersive on long road trips. Now, the trade-offs. The biggest hidden cost isn't the price tag, it's the power requirement. The X12 is rated for 2,500 watts RMS, and while you don't need a 3,000-watt amp to drive it, you do need an amp that can comfortably sit in the 500 to 1,000-watt RMS range per channel to avoid clipping. Underpowering the sub can lead to distortion, especially in the low-mid range, and that's a common complaint among first-time owners who think more watts equals more bass without matching the amp to the enclosure. In practical terms, that means you either have to already own a beefy amp or be prepared to budget for one. It's not a deal-breaker, but it's a factor that catches people off guard. Another consideration is installation space. The X12's dual 2-ohm voice coils give you flexibility. Wire them in parallel for a 1-ohm load or in series for a 4-ohm load, but they also add a little bulk to the mounting pattern. In tight trunk spaces, you may have to sacrifice some cargo room or get creative with a custom bracket. The unit itself weighs about 35 pounds, so you'll need a sturdy mounting point. Otherwise, you risk vibration transfer to the vehicle's body, which can cause rattling over time. That's why many installers recommend adding a few extra rubber isolation pads, even though Sundown already includes a heavy-duty motor structure. If you're the type of buyer who wants instant, plug-and-play bass, the X12 might feel like more work than you bargained for. A pre-built sealed enclosure with a smaller sub can give you a quick boost without the need to calculate port tuning or worry about matching impedance. On the other hand, if you enjoy tweaking your sound system, listening to how different box sizes affect the roll-off point, and you have the amp headroom, the X12 rewards that attention with a depth that's hard to replicate in a compact package. Let's break down the strengths that matter after the box is built and the wires are hooked up. The first is the sheer low-frequency extension. With the right port, the X12 can comfortably hit the 30 Hz mark, which is about as low as you can go in a typical car environment before the cabin itself starts to act like a filter. That low end is audible in genres that rely on sub-bass, think EDM drops or modern hip-hop beats, without the sound becoming muddy. Second, the dual voice coil design gives you wiring flexibility, which is a practical advantage when you're pairing the sub with a multi-channel amp or a crossover that expects a specific load. Third, the heavy-duty motor is built to handle high power over long periods, so you're less likely to encounter overheating if you run the system at high volume for a road trip playlist. On the downside, the sub's demand for a well-tuned ported box can be a stumbling block for beginners. A badly tuned enclosure will either make the X12 sound boomy, with a lot of unnecessary vibration, or it will kill the low end, leaving you with a high-frequency thump that feels more like a rattling speaker than a subwoofer. Also, the need for a